It's 2:17 a.m. in December 1996. The building is quiet in the way offices only get after midnight, when the air conditioning hum becomes louder than the people who used to be there. Under one of the desks, a programmer is asleep on the floor. His jacket is bunched up against the wall. The computer above him hasn't stopped running. He wakes up suddenly, sits up, and stares at the screen. The camera hitch is still there. Every time the view swings too fast, the engine stutters. He rubs his eyes, cracks his fingers, and starts typing again without checking the clock. Time has stopped behaving normally. Meals blur together. Days don't feel distinct. The only thing that still has shape is the problem itself. The game isn't finished yet, and until it is, leaving doesn't make sense. That was John Carmack in the mid-1990s, sleeping under his desk at id Software while building the engines that powered Doom and Quake. The machines he was working with fought him constantly. Memory was limited, processing power was tight, and every frame came with trade-offs. The engine stuttered whenever the camera moved too fast, and that single flaw was enough to keep him in the office night after night, rewriting core systems until motion finally felt right. What happened at id Software wasn't isolated. In the late 1990s, Valve reached a breaking point with Half-Life. What they had was functional, but the game felt inert. Gabe Newell made the call to tear it apart less than a year from release. Levels were rebuilt, systems were stripped out. Long nights blurred together as the team reorganized the entire experience around scripted events that played out inside the world rather than stopping it cold with cutscenes. Developers later admitted there was real doubt about whether the game would ship at all.
When Half-Life released in 1998, it was both successful and changed how narrative could live inside a first-person game without breaking player control.
Around the same time, Bungie was burning through nights in Chicago trying to make Halo Combat Evolved hold together as its target hardware shifted beneath it. The project pivoted platforms mid-development. Frame rate problems refused to disappear. Combat systems were redesigned late, close enough to launch that nothing felt locked. Sleeping in the office became routine. When Halo shipped in 2001, its controls, AI behavior, and combat rhythm, they became the foundation for console shooters for the next decade. Then there was Grand Theft Auto 3. In 2000, DMA Design, soon to be Rockstar North, was forcing a fully 3D open city to run on the PlayStation 2 under constant instability. Physics behaved unpredictably, missions broke, systems collided in ways no one fully understood. Instead of smoothing everything out, the team bent the design around what emerged. Developers later admitted that many of the game's defining traits came from things they didn't have time to correct. When GTA 3 released in 2001, it was a hit. It rewrote what freedom felt like inside a digital space. These games weren't refined into greatness. They were dragged there. Teams worked close to failure, made irreversible decisions late, and trusted momentum when certainty ran out. Crunch didn't guarantee quality, but it created an environment where risk couldn't be avoided and invention stayed constant. That environment produced grit as residue left behind by unstable processes and people who stayed with a problem until it finally gave way. That instability didn't last forever. As game development became a stable, professionalized career, the kind of people entering studios changed. Only people with time, money, and insulation could afford to study games academically, to take unpaid internships, and to spend years refining taste rather than wrestling with technical survival problems.
When those developers entered the studio, they had all of the complete engines and foundations handed to them. So, what remained open for debate was tone, framing, and presentation.
You can see that shift clearly in specific moments. In GTA 5, Lamar's early knock-knock entrance was originally crude, confrontational, and unfiltered, exactly in line with the world Rockstar had built.
Knock, knock, niggas.
Hello,
In later versions, that moment is rewritten to acknowledge political correctness directly.
Knock, knock, my politically incorrect racial epithets. What that shit?
The scene plays the same, the mission structure doesn't change, but the line no longer sounds like something the character would naturally say inside his world. It sounds like a writer stepping in to manage how the audience receives it. The attention moves away from immersion and towards self-awareness. The same thing happens elsewhere. The Last of Us Part 2 and its subsequent revisions, while most people did not consider Ellie's sexuality in the first part, and with no necessity for it, all of a sudden Ellie's gay. Then again, in the second part, Joel Miller was killed by a new character named Abby Anderson early, and he was not even given a hero's death. In the second game's opening hours, and early in Season 2 of the show, Joel and his brother Tommy rescue Abby from an infected attack. Trusting the stranger, Joel introduces himself. Abby and her group then spring a trap, shooting Joel in the leg and brutally beating him to death with a golf club in front of a restrained and horrified Ellie. And to make matters worse, after the game's initial hours focusing on Ellie's pursuit of Abby, the narrative abruptly shifts, and players are made to experience a large, multi-day chunk of the story from Abby's perspective. Joel continues designed to build empathy for Abby by showing her backstory, her motivations for killing Joel. Abby survives the entire game. At the climax, after a brutal and exhausting final fight on a beach in Santa Barbara, Ellie has Abby pinned down and is drowning her. She then has a final flashback of Joel and decides that killing Abby won't bring her peace or end her trauma. She spares Abby's life, allowing her and Lev to sail away toward a good life. And in cases like the Saints Row reboot, this shift wasn't subtle at all. It was aggressive. The most immediate and polarizing change was the cast. Instead of the unhinged, criminal energy the series was built on, we got characters that felt like cringy millennials and TikTok influencers doing cosplay. At that point, the game had clearly lost its soul. It felt like the developers were actively trying to torch their own legacy with a hodgepodge of forced humor, corporate irony, and climate lecture energy that had nothing to do with Saints Row. And even then, if you had half a brain and still decided to buy the game, what you actually paid for was a glitchy mess filled with broken systems and straight-up bizarre behavior. This is a newer trend that's quietly become normal. Studios shipping unfinished games and treating the launch like a paid beta. Now you're expected to download patches later like that's part of the experience. Most modern games update once a month. Nearly every major release ships with a mandatory day one patch that fixes bugs, stabilizes performance, and sometimes adds content that didn't even make it onto the disc. After launch, especially with big AAA open-world games, updates keep rolling for weeks or months because issues only show up once millions of people start playing. But here's the thing. This used to be a death sentence. Back in the day, releasing a broken game could wipe out a studio. The infamous 1982 E.T. game on Atari didn't just flop, it helped crash the entire industry. Sonic 2006 was trashed for being unfinished, and it stood out precisely because that level of brokenness was rare. It wasn't normal, it was embarrassing. In the 90s, instability came from pushing hardware to its limits. Today, instability comes from shipping unfinished code. In the Carmack era, if you shipped a broken game, you went bankrupt. Now, if you ship a broken game, you promise a roadmap. The grit of solving problems before launch has been replaced by the live service mentality of fixing it later. And that's how grit disappears. Developers slowly forget why they're making games in the first place and start chasing approval instead of fun. Despite all of this, we're gaslit into pretending it's totally normal that sexuality and identity suddenly become the central pillar of games that were never about that. The Last of Us retroactively reframing Ellie. Dragon Age turning a character's gender identity into a core narrative driver instead of letting the world speak for itself. Saints Row morphing into what feels like a college gender studies lecture with guns. Now, contrary to the idea that developers are tired of making money, that's not what's happening at all. In my view, there are two main reasons behind this shift. First, you have rich, privileged kids with zero passion for games suddenly landing jobs in these studios and projecting their own ideologies into franchises they didn't build and don't understand. Second, studios are desperately trying to break into new markets. Whether people like it or not, the core console audience has always been men. That hasn't changed, but growth has flatlined and companies are panicking. So they're trying to expand by pandering to women and younger audiences. From a pure business standpoint, it makes sense. Men are cheap. We don't buy shit. Women, statistically, spend more, engage more, and are marketing gold. That alone isn't the problem. The problem is the cost. The cost is alienating the audience that built these franchises in the first place and acting like what they loved never mattered. That's the exact emotion people felt playing The Last of Us Part 2. Joel gets killed, Ellie is sidelined emotionally, and the player is forced to empathize with Abby whether they want to or not. And that's why so many players are fleeing to indie games, which come with their own brutal reality. Most indie games fail. Many never leave early access. Steam takes a 30% cut right off the top. Add refunds, taxes, VAT, payment fees, and suddenly a $20 game might earn the developer $4. A huge indie success of 100,000 copies sounds impressive until you realize that's $400,000 spread over 2 years, split among 5 people. That's barely $10 an hour while crunching non-stop. And that's before marketing, influencers, or burnout kick in. Eventually, sales dry up. Early adopters move on. Everyone else waits for a discount or full release. So on one side, AAA studios ship unfinished, identity-obsessed messes and call it progress. On the other, indie devs grind themselves into the ground just trying to survive. And somehow, we're told this is the healthiest gaming has ever been. Please, if you loved this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe.